33-year-old Louis Anacortes sat on a freshly finished and washed marine teak and iron bench overlooking Riff Lake. In happier times, during countless visits here, he and his family had sailed on the lake. He studied the freshly polished brass plaque on the bench. Donated by the Edmonds family of Mossy Rock in memory of our beloved grandfather, Kennewick Edmonds, this bench is for all to enjoy so they can enjoy the beauty of the area he loved so much. Louis, as a native of these parts, upon reading the inscription, laughed short, sharp, and bitterly. He knew why old Kennewick loved the area, and in particular, this lookout where a bench had been strategically placed in his honor. From this spot, Kennewick often rested and gazed longingly at the crystal blue water that flooded his childhood home decades ago when Tacoma City Light built the Mossy Rock Dam to generate electricity for the city. Louis knew the town of Riff was out there somewhere, but it lay 60 feet below the shimmering surface of the lake, which now reflected a gorgeous blue sky and jagged clouds. A variety of native pines grow beneath the forest canopy surrounding the lake. Some of the western whites and ponderosas towered more than 36 feet into the sky. As a child, Louis had always dreamed of climbing to the top of one of them to see if he could touch the vast sky. He had a cherished memory of his late father. Once, when he was a young boy, he and his father had lain on their backs on the shore of a lake and rested. Their antique bamboo fishing rods by H.L. Leonard were leaned against a tree. Those were tuned to the salmon that thrived in these waters. They gazed skyward, admiring nature's amazing work, and at the same time, rested. He told his father about his desire to climb to the top of one of the pine trees. His father was silent for several minutes and did not even pay attention to Louis's statement. Just when Louis thought his father must have let his words pass his ears, he began humming a line from Jimi Hendrix's song, Purple Haze. "Forgive me while I kiss the sky." His father was a terrible singer. He couldn't get the melody out even to save his own life, but it never stopped him from singing. When his father's voice would repeat that line, the teenage Louis would look around embarrassed, praying that no one would witness his singing. In adulthood, however, the incident is pleasantly and indelibly etched in his memory. Louis lost both of his parents to cancer when he was very young. This fact, as well as his understanding of genetics, was one of the reasons this encounter happened. Life is too short. Louis's attention was now drawn to the lake itself. Nearly 23 miles long, it was so deep that no light could shine through the darkness that enveloped the once vibrant, close-knit community of Riffé. The darkness hid all evidence that it had ever existed because it would never again be seen in the light. Louis thought it an apt metaphor for his marriage. To any passerby unfamiliar with the nightmare in which Louis had recently lived, it might have appeared to be serenely absorbing the secluded beauty of the warm fall weather that occasionally visited the Pacific Northwest. Locals still refer to this phenomenon, despite its current political incorrectness, as Indian summer, Indian summer. When it comes, there is no finer time or place on earth. It almost makes 9 long months of dreary rain seem bearable. Although outwardly Louis looked calm, inside, he was seething. He had to endure this nightmare alone. He was an only child, and he didn't have many friends outside of the fire station. None of the guys at the station could talk to Louis about his problems because, unlike how they are portrayed on TV, firefighters don't spend all their free time talking about their fears and emotions, sharing intimate moments with their fellow firefighters. No one dares to show weakness in front of others for fear they will lose trust in them. Their lives depend on each other, and even a moment's hesitation caused by the uncertainty that they could trust someone to do the right thing in extreme circumstances could prove fatal. No, in this, Louis was utterly alone. He had purposely arrived early because, truth be told, he was counting on the healing power of his favorite lake and the magical natural oil of nature to help him survive this meeting his soon-to-be ex-wife had requested. She actually requested it. and his lawyer said it would be in his best interest to grant the request. It would look good in family court, his lawyer admonished him. In addition, his lawyer was becoming increasingly frustrated with Blaine's constant obstruction to delay the inevitable. Lewis couldn't understand why Blaine kept insisting that their marriage could survive her insanity. She wants her attorney to demand mandatory counseling. It doesn't matter to her that in the state of Washington, a family court judge can't schedule it. Both attorneys tried until they were blue in the face to talk to Blaine, but to no avail. Lewis felt that Blaine definitely needed some kind of therapy, but that was no longer his concern. Oh well, he sighed, thinking to himself, it's going to end today anyway. Blaine could have demanded an appointment, but Lewis insisted on the spot. He knew that the summer crowds would already be a distant memory, so the place would likely be given to them alone. This meeting would not go the way Blaine expected. He cast a brief glance at his watch. She should arrive in a few minutes, but he knew he actually had plenty of time. For one thing, Blaine would have to drive Highway 12 a considerable distance, something she couldn't stand. She'd never been on time for anything, including their wedding. For that one, she was an hour late. He let out the same cynical chuckle when the quick memory of that came to him, thought he'd rather have left the church after being 20 minutes late, as his best man had jokingly suggested over 13 years ago, but quickly dismissed the thought. The truth was that the first 12.5 years of his marriage to Blaine had been a perfect dream. Lewis loved his two daughters, Rainier and Lacey, more than life. Rain, as she was called, was a daddy's girl to the core. She was already in school and preparing to become a firefighter, just like her idolized father. Lacey, on the other hand, was his wife's mini-me. For Lewis, this proved to be just one of many complications. Family courts don't like to separate children. That and the fact that in Washington state, family law does not set an age for a child under 18 to choose which parent to live with in a divorce. However, according to the attorney, not all is lost. Despite the complexity, Washington divorce and child custody law allows a husband and wife to jointly submit a child care plan to the court. If the judge finds that the plan is detailed, complete, and financially fair for the children, he or she will usually sign it without modification. The trick, his lawyer told him, was to get the wife to agree to a very difficult proposal that Lewis wanted his wife to accept. Lewis was a realist. Even before the lawyer confirmed it to him, he realized that his job as a firefighter with the Riverside Fire Department, known as RFA, would almost certainly not allow him to get primary custody of his daughters. The dangerous nature of the job and the shift work schedule were almost insurmountable obstacles to considering custody. It took time and money, a lot of money, to devise the plan he had set in motion. He closed his eyes and mentally went back to that horrible day a few months ago when his nightmarish existence began. He had no way of deciding if his current life was an episode of The Twilight Zone or the movie Groundhog Day. His reality is both surreal and horrifyingly repetitive. "Lewis, honey, can we talk in the living room, please?" He had just completed his pleasant nightly ritual of putting the girls to bed in their shared bedroom when he heard her voice. Although he needed sleep because his next 24-hour shift was starting tomorrow morning, he couldn't wait to talk to his wife. He hoped Blaine wanted to continue discussing their shared desire to buy their own house. The four of them were living in a rented 3-bedroom apartment and really wanted to buy their own home permanently now that their careers were secured. Both agreed that it is much better to raise their daughters in their own home. It's more permanent. On his way to the living room, he stopped by the kitchen and grabbed a bottle of water from the refrigerator. He lowered himself onto the worn couch they'd inherited from his parents and turned to Blaine, swinging his right leg over his left so that he was facing her. For a moment, he ruffled Blaine's loose blonde hair that always covered her ear, then tucked it gently behind her ear flap and dropped his hand to her shoulder. "What's up, sweetheart?" He didn't remember much after that. His memories of their conversation were mostly fragmentary, soul-piercing stabs to the heart in a kaleidoscope of shock, disbelief, and anger. His reaction, however, was crystal clear. Months later, he was still confused by how shockingly weak and emotional his reaction was. He had cried, really cried in front of her. It was so pathetic that he could feel the pity on Blaine's part. Stumbling, he walked out of the house and walked away from the source of his torment. One good thing about being a firefighter was that there was always a spare bunk to sleep on. No one ever questioned his constant presence. Everyone knew the divorce statistics on the job. After a few days, he was able to piece together what his wife had told him. She didn't ask permission, just told him what she was going to do. When he finally got home, he was going to beg his wife not to destroy their family, was going to beg her to go to counseling with him to see how their marriage could be saved. But no sooner had he started than he was immediately ambushed by his loving and innocent daughters. Blaine had promised him that they would come to meet him at her parents' house. He turned and looked at his wife standing there with a sly, victorious grin on her face. The love he had once felt for her was long gone. It had now been replaced by a burning hatred. He glared at Blaine. His normally calm face contorted with a rage bordering on murder. For a moment, her look of superiority wiped away and was replaced by fear. But it was at that very moment that his girls began to attack him. In their blissful ignorance, they begged for an explanation as to why he was abandoning them. He had to literally pull himself out of Rain and Lacey's desperate embrace as they begged, screamed, and cried. Rain had the hardest time. "Daddy, how can I be a firefighter without you?" He knew that scene would play over and over in his head until the day he died, regardless of the outcome. Lewis, however, knew that the alternative for his ladies would be worse in the long run. In the end, he was grateful to Blaine. In an instant, he had gone from a weak victim to a man whose path was clear. In an instant, Lewis mentally thanked her. He had regained his dignity and taken the first step toward recovery. Today, he thanked her. "I know it's hard for you girls, and I hope one day you'll understand me. It's just that your mom and I are estranged. We want different things out of life, but I promise you that I will never leave you. I'll see you often and love you forever." He never once looked back at Blaine. When finally freed from the clutches of his girls, he walked purposefully out of his apartment for the last time. From that day forward, Lewis hadn't said a word to his soon-to-be ex-wife. Wisely left it to his attorney to speak for himself. Lewis didn't know if he had dozed off, or if he was so engrossed in his memories that he had lost track of time. "Hello, Lewis. Thank you for meeting me. Our daughters miss you very much." Her voice, which had once been a reassuring and caring greeting to him, scratched his mind like fingernails on an old chalkboard. He shook his head to clear his thoughts. It was showtime. "Doing this is what my lawyer Blaine told me to do. In a perfect world, I'd never have to look at your ugly face again." He didn't even look in her direction, stared straight at the lake, searching for strength in its quiet familiarity. He heard her shocked. "Ah, yes, she thought this session would go differently." Lewis smiled involuntarily and looked at her. "I know this is on you, Blaine, but I have to tell you something before you start. This is the last conversation you and I will have on this subject. If you repeat one of those ridiculous reasons you've repeated ad nauseum that this is supposed to make our marriage stronger, if you tell me one more time how much you love me, if you tell me that it's just my fragile male ego standing in the way, if you even hint that I'm to blame for the breakup of our family, I will get up and walk out of here. At this point, you disgust me so much that I'm physically sickened by your mere presence." "Lewis, I don't know." Lewis was sure that Blaine was preparing to repeat his nauseating, "But I love you both" speech, and raised his hand to her face. "Let me save you the trouble, Blaine. See this?" He pointed to a large, ubiquitous manila envelope on the bench seat. "Those are the divorce papers that will end our marriage. When you leave here in a few minutes, take them with you. You'll sign them after your attorney has reviewed them. You will return them to my attorney's office within 36 hours. He turned away from her to admire the breathtaking view once more, then continued. Your attorney will confirm that everything here meets the state's requirements for a parenting plan. But I don't want a cheating wife, so we'll both end up getting a divorce. Now pay attention because this is important. Lewis sighed in frustration, even though deep down he knew Blaine would make things even more complicated than they needed to be. The parenting plan is what the family court pays the most attention to. What I'm proposing is fair. We don't have a lot of savings, so the rest will be split in half. You'll have custody of the girls. What? You're not gonna fight me on this? Blaine snorted. Of course not. The girls need a mother, and despite actually being a shitty wife, you've been a decent mother, so no. And you'll keep the apartment so the girls don't have to change schools or find new girlfriends. I will pay half of the housing costs and pay more than the minimum required child support. I will also have plenty of visits with my girls. It's all spelled out here. At that moment, a myriad of emotions ran through Blaine's mind. She was surprised, delighted, and disappointed all at the same time. She had counted on Lewis's love for his daughters to keep him home and keep their marriage intact. It was at this point that Blaine began to realize exactly what she had lost and began to cry in earnest. Look, Blaine, the reality is that with my work schedule and the risk from my job, I know I don't stand a chance of getting custody of the girls. Even if you had sex with the entire Seahawks soccer team on the 50-yard line at halftime of a playoff game, it wouldn't change the fact. But Lewis, can't we? Don't interrupt, Blaine. We're just getting to the point. You should pay very, very close attention to the next part. He squinted at her impatiently, pulled a thick letter-sized envelope from his pocket and handed it to her. She opened it and began to look through the contents. As I said, if the divorce papers are not signed and on my attorney's desk exactly as written within 36 hours, everyone in your family, your co-workers, your manager, and everyone else you have ever known will receive a copy of what is inside. This is your copy. It's a detailed account in vivid colors of what you did to end your marriage, and more importantly, a record of what you demanded I accept as part of continuing my marriage to you. It got expensive, but it was worth every penny Lewis spent to get the investigators' report. I will also make sure that my daughters know exactly how and why their family was destroyed. Blaine was clearly shocked by what she saw. She couldn't imagine that this was the truth. No, it had to be a lie. Her lover couldn't be that kind of man. Lewis was lying. Lewis honestly wasn't sure he had the courage to go through with it, as it would hurt his girls too much. But on the other hand, he didn't think he would have to resort to this nuclear option. Besides, it could land him in jail and out of work. He was also really counting on the fact that her lover would turn out to be who Lewis thought he was. And most importantly, Blaine is as servile and gullible as this asshole seems to think she is. The important thing here, Blaine, is that they have to be signed exactly as I suggest. If your lawyer calls mine and says my client and I, or if he changes a single comma, period, or semicolon, the gloves will come off and your whole world will know what a piece of shit you are. Blaine, shaken to the core, continued to leaf through the investigator's report. She could only continue to spout nonsensical noises, sniffling and crying throughout Lewis's monologue, just shaking her head in disbelief. It wasn't supposed to happen this way. Why can't Lewis understand? Of course, I'm offering a quid pro quo arrangement, so here's what I'm willing to do in exchange for your cooperation. I promise I will never speak ill of you or blame you for the breakup of our family in the eyes of my daughters. I'll even be civil to your boyfriend if we end up together at one of the girls' birthday parties. Hell, I'll even shake his slimy hand if I have to. In every sense, I will act polite and civilized as if we just decided to part ways amicably. I will do the same with every one of your family and friends. I'll even babysit if you and the Slytherin want to go somewhere last minute for the weekend. In short, I'll be the best ex-husband for any cheating wife. Thanks, Lewis, but this is all so unnecessary. Stop, Blaine. Don't you ever mention that piece of shit's name in my presence. Lewis. He's a good guy. He's not. No, Blaine, he's not. He's... Shit, let's cut to the chase. Whose idea was it to tell me about your relationship? His, Lewis. He said it's not nice to deceive a good man like you. Lewis laughed caustically, interrupting Blaine. Bullshit, Blaine. He did it to guarantee he'd get exactly the same reaction from me as you did. Has he already asked when he can move in with you? Her eyes opened wide at the same time as her mouth. Lewis thought she looked exactly like one of her favorite emojis she liked to use. Blaine was silent. She stared at her hands, which she clenched fiercely. Her posture was so stiff and fragile that it looked as if she was afraid the slightest movement would make her turn into a pillar of dust. That's what I thought, Blaine. It's all in the report you're holding in your hands. Lewis jabbed his fingers at the papers in her hands. You're not his first, and you won't be his last. His record is here. He's not like that. He really loves me. She spoke so quietly that Lewis had to strain to hear her pathetic words. It brought an understanding smile to his face. He exhaled slowly, and a peaceful calm descended on him, as if another breeze from his favorite lake had washed over his face. It was almost over. He knew he had chosen the right path. He knew there were risks, but he had everything under control now. He was confident that everything would fall into place the way he wanted it to. His voice softened considerably. Look at me, Blaine. We're almost done here. It's important that you pay close attention. She raised her eyes to his. Her tear-drenched face was a mask of confusion, ruined mascara, and fear. Her perfect world had been shattered. When she finally looked into Lewis's eyes, she saw a stone, menacing face with eyes black as night boring into her. Take care of my girls, Blaine. They're our girls, Lewis, she protested weakly. Her shyness made it sound more like a question. No, Blaine, they're not. They're my girls. You betrayed them and threw them away like you did me. Because you're weak and can't keep your legs together. I need you to take care of them for me just for a couple years. What are you talking about? You could almost smell her fear. I'll never give them up. You already have, you just don't realize it yet. Anyway, your boyfriend will take care of it. He meant what he said. Has he used that phrase with you yet? Baby, just take some of this. It will make our sex so much better. Our lovemaking will be so intense you can't imagine. All your nerve endings will be on fire. Here, just wash it down with a little of this. She looked at her hands again, bashfully. Soon he'll be sharing you with his friends. Come on, baby, Justin's such a nice guy. Don't you want to see what it's like to be loved by more than one man at a time just once? Blaine shook her head slowly, looking into the void, muttering, He wouldn't do that to me. He loves me. Fuck you, Blaine. In a few months, that jerk will be hitting on you at his favorite bars. Lewis was on fire. But the good news is that I have a couple more years before I finish the courses required for a bachelor's degree in fire science. After that, I'll be able to apply for the fire marshal position when Frank retires. Then I will have almost no mandatory hours. That should be about the time you start to crash and burn. That's when I'll sue for full custody. By then, you'll probably be so stoned you won't care. You're wrong. He's not like that at all. Please, Lewis, I really love you. I love our family. Why can't you see? No, you don't see it, Lewis roared at her. You never have. Honestly, I don't think you're capable of loving anyone but yourself. I was just blinded by my love for who I thought you were. I was just a convenient prop for you. The girls just cemented your power over me. When your asshole boyfriend showed up with his magic tool, you played right into his hands. You threw your family away like yesterday's sour milk. .. M-. Maybe we can start over, she tearfully suggested. No, Blaine, we can't. There's nothing left to start over. Besides, you won't give up on him, because then your failure as a wife, mother, and human being will be on display for all to see. No, you will continue to pretend that you and the asshole are happy and in love. You are deliberately going down the path of self-destruction because you have no choice. Because if you did have a choice, deep down you'd have to admit to yourself what an asshole you are. If you dared to self-evaluate, you wouldn't be able to live with what you discovered. Now you have no choice but to live with who you are for the rest of your miserable life. But if I'm wrong and you both actually love each other, I'm sure it won't be long before your magical businessman starts insinuating that you're being hampered by the need to babysit. He'll probably start with, "Why don't we just let Lewis take them more often?" Something like that. You won't argue with him because you don't want to give up the fantasy sex. That's the same thing you told me when you said I'd have to share you with that parasite. If he finally threatens to leave you after proposing, coaxing, and finally promising he'll leave, if you don't give the girls to me, well then, you'll be back to square one, won't you? He smiled at her confusion. Either way, I win and you lose. It's only a matter of time, and I'm a patient guy. Lewis looked out over the azure surface of the lake again. For a moment, the breeze died down. The water was like glass in a closet door. It was time to leave. He vowed to himself that he would come back here often with his daughters. His girls loved it here, but it wasn't enough. He wanted them to love this place as much as he did. He stood up, but not because he was done with her, but because there was so much adrenaline in his body that his central nervous system wouldn't let him stay still any longer. He needed to discuss one last essential detail with her. Lewis stepped awkwardly around the bench. He placed his hands on the smooth, varnished teak on either side of Blaine's shoulders and gripped it tightly. He slowly leaned over to whisper in her ear. In a quiet voice full of gloating, he said with quiet fury, "Tell your shitty boy that if I get even a hint or even a mere suggestion that he is behaving inappropriately with my daughters, I will kill him. And it doesn't matter what it is. Drugs, sexual innuendo, simple peeping at them in their nightgowns, I'm going to kill him. Tell him he won't have to sneak around or look over his shoulder looking for me because I'll come at him head on. I want him to realize in his last moment that I'm the one who ended his miserable fucking existence on this earth. The same goes for you, Blaine." His voice began to shake, his throat sore from the strain. The pressure of his grip intensified as adrenaline kicked in with every word he spat out at her. "You tell him this, Blaine." At the last word, there was a loud crack as the hard wood gave into Lewis's death grip. Blaine flinched sharply. Lewis looked down curiously at the shattered piece of lattice. It must have been dry rot. For her part, Blaine didn't look at him. She wouldn't stop sobbing and whimpering. Her body shook as if she was suffering from hypothermia. Remember, Blaine, 36 hours, not 37, and now I'm leaving. He looked at his hands. His nails were broken, his hands bloody and strewn with splinters. That's strange. That didn't hurt at all. For a moment, he stared at Blaine in silence. All he saw was the empty shell of something that had once been human. He cast one last glance at his surroundings, took a deep breath of clean mountain air, then turned and walked away.